is Jill Schiedt, Agronomy Specialist with the University of Missouri Extension, and today I'm going to talk about scouting for podworms and looking at defoliation rates in soybeans. So it's best to scout for podworms in soybeans in the morning or in the evening when it's cooler. Typically the podworms are more active during that time, and I also like to tell people to look in thicker areas of the field because that's where the moths are more likely to lay the eggs, so the more likely you are to find a higher population of podworms. And so what I like to do whenever I scout for podworms is I like to grab some plants and shake them really hard and try to beat the insects to the ground. So this is how I shake the plants, and you may break a few off in the process of shaking them. And then I just look on the ground, and the threshold level for podworms is 1 per foot of row. And you can use a sweep net as well, but I like to shake them because I feel like you get more knocked off that way. But my hands are about 6 inches long, so I'll be looking in about this space here through the row. And right now, luckily, I don't see any podworms, and it is in the morning, so they should be active if they are. And since I shake the plants, I like to look in the adjacent rows as well, just in case I got any insects into the next row, and I'm not seeing any right now. Also, you're going to want to inspect the pods. If 5% or more of the pods are damaged, you're going to want to treat as well. And when you're inspecting the pods and looking for insect bites, make sure they're new. The way you can tell between new and old insect bites is insect feeding is if there's brown around the edges of the green area, and that generally means it's an older feeding. And I don't see any podworms right now. Other insects that podworms can be confused with are green clover worms, and the difference between green clover worms and soybean loopers and podworms are, you can look at their prolegs, and the prolegs are located in the middle of the body. Soybean loopers have 2 prolegs, and green clover worm have 3 prolegs. And then right about now, we're getting into September, and fall armyworm are going to be out. The difference between podworm and fall armyworm is that both podworm and fall armyworm have 4 prolegs, but fall armyworm have black on the underside of their prolegs. And generally we don't have a threshold level for cloverworm, looper, or fall armyworm in soybeans because they are foliage feeders, so we go with the defoliation rate there. And I have some examples of defoliation rates, and what we're looking for in soybeans is before bloom we can have 30% defoliation, and during or after bloom we want to look for 20% defoliation before we're spraying. And so this is an example of 5% defoliation. This would be an example of about 10% defoliation. And this defoliation here, the lace-like defoliation, is from Japanese beetle, and they're out of the field right now. And so if there are no insects present, which there aren't any right now, we wouldn't want to spray because we wouldn't be spraying for anything. This is about 15% defoliation, 20% defoliation, 30% defoliation, and this would be about 50% defoliation. And you want to look for this defoliation over the entire plant, so not just a few leaves. Basically all the leaves need to be at that defoliation rate before you're going to want to consider to spray before you're at threshold level. Thank you.